Yeah, so we are going live again. We apologize for last time. We went off without completing the entire session because we had a storm in the state where I am right now. And so we were unable to really make a full communication to end up our conversation. But now we are back, most likely with a different topic. Last time the topic that we were discussing on was, is Uganda ready for political change? And now today's question, the conversation is going to be based on, is corruption the only cause for African underdevelopment? Well, all along, actually from the days when we were growing up to our current days right now, we're looking into the same kind of problems. I mean, we've gone to school and we are facing the same challenges. So right now we're waiting for you to join us and join this discussion so that we can see what's going on. We can discuss, share ideas, share political views, economic views, social views, environmental views, what you think could be the cause for African development in this 21st century. Again, my name's David Lubuurwa, and I'm again always happy to join you, the world, to discuss a few things that we think can liberate Africa. So now most of our discussion, we don't just talk about points of views and we just leave them there, but we want to start acting upon them so that we can see a change in the continent, the change in the African section. So you can share with your friends as we're waiting for them. You can like them, you can share, you can send me a friend request. You can always be updated on all the events that we are to have in the next days to come. Our discussion is specifically based on how we can improve our economy and how we can improve our generation, and looking to the problems that are hindering African development. And most cases, I really want to focus on the global system because the economies are quite different in most cases. When you want to compare, especially now, in many cases, I've seen many people in Uganda who compare Uganda with America. These are totally different economies. And it's a disservice for all of us to really focus on this rather than focusing on what can make us move faster. So I'm still waiting for you guys to join me. You can send in your request. You can send in, you can like the page. Yeah, we are here just to share what we think can liberate us from the situations or the political, economic problems or challenges that we are facing today. So you can send in your request. You can like our page. I'm just waiting for someone to say hi so that we can start with the discussion together as a way to see where do we expect development to come from. Someone might be, well, I started some time back, but the settings of my page have been on my private. They've been private, so no one has been seeing what has been going on. So I had to ask the technician to help me out in putting things together live so that the public can watch this video with me. So the question we're having today is corruption the only cause of African involvement? Last time in the discussion we had a few days ago, it was and still, is Uganda ready for political change? And unfortunately, we did not complete the entire show because we did not complete the entire discussion because we had power shortage, we had storm around here, and we spent some days without power. And it's in history that That never happens in our areas here, but it's so happening because of the weather conditions. But in any case, you can join me right now, send in your views, send in your requests. You can privately send in your text. If I don't read it here, we're going to work on it. But my team and I, we are ready to receive any comment, any suggestion, and ideas that you really feel like could help us liberate our economy, especially the African economy, towards being successful. We are eager that change can come, but it can only come if you and I join hands. Thank you, Princess Frida, for joining in, and the likes, Hussein Delima, thank you for joining in. Yeah, I'm seeing many people who are joining in. Hello, Delima, thank you for joining in. I'm seeing many people. So the discussion is corruption the only cause for African development? We're not just looking at Uganda specifically, because I have come to realize personally that the problems we are facing are not just stopping in Uganda. What is happening in Uganda today is the same problem that is happening in Kenya, same problem that is happening in Nigeria. These are the problems that are happening everywhere. So send in your requests, send in your questions, your suggestions. You can privately send me your email, or your question or your text. You can inbox me. If I don't read it, my team will pass it on to me, and I'll be in a position to share it with you. So what do you think about corruption in Africa? Is it the main cause for Africa's underdevelopment, or there's some other reasons why Africa is not developed today? Keep on sending in your private emails, where actually someone is using just the email, not Facebook itself. Let me read so far what many have done here. Thank you, Princess Frida, for sharing the video to many people on your page. Thank you, Delima, for liking. It's really interesting because our discussions make us move forward, especially we as the African people. You know what's happening in Uganda right now. It's not about strike. It's about the freedom that people are yearning for over the years. You know what's happening in Kenya. On 26th of last month, there were elections. And you know what's now happening, because both parties are not in agreement of who won the elections. Some are saying it wasn't done. Some are saying they were rigged. So we have a lot to discuss about, to think about where we can put Africa in the next generation. It's not about us today. It's about the future that's coming. It's about where we are heading to. Are we ready to face a chaotic Africa, or we are ready to face a peaceful Africa that is ready to change? So I want to give you some of the reasons that I think personally could be the reasons for African development. And I want to look at education and knowledge gap. The problems that we face today, specifically concerning education, we have education, and I want to, say thank you for what the government, especially in Uganda, has done. We want to thank you for the elementary education or primary education that is free. But the question that we have to ask under education, is that education liberating Africa, or we are just producing half-baked children? And are these people capable of competing with those who are in private schools to bring about change? I'm a political scientist, and I believe that in politics, we can make someone believe in the idea that we come up with. I can make someone think that killing yourself is the best solution towards bringing change. But in reality, when you die, nobody's going to be there forever to appreciate the power you did. But if you stay strong, you can fight and bring about change. So we want to thank the governments in Africa, especially from the days they introduced the structural adjustment programs, that to some, including me, we do not believe that they have really performed the work they had to do. But again, we cannot just stop there. We have to appreciate that they were introduced to liberate our economies. So education, where children are trained in schools that have no blackboards, in schools that have no books, in schools that have no teachers, it's wonderful education. The word education exists, but the product of that education, what we call formal education, could be a problem in the next generation, inclusive of our generation. So I think that could be another reason why Africa is underdeveloped. My child's corruption is overeating everything. Those are some of the reasons, I think. So you can send me your questions, your comments. I'm here just to share what many people think. Let me read what someone has just sent me right now. Yeah, again, thank you, Kahinde Karen Baguma, for joining in. That's interesting because I'm seeing many people joining the program right now, the discussion, so that we can see what we can do for Africa to develop. It's not about being a political scientist. It's not about being a politician. It's not about being great. It's about developing our economy towards making it one of the best in the world. You see, America or South Africa, America, China, Japan, they were once like many of the African countries. But the only difference they made was to believe in themselves that they could make a change. And now we are experiencing that change. We're seeing China now almost taking over the world. But China, the United States is still great, but we're seeing China coming up. We've seen Japan in technology. Our market, the African market, is one of the biggest markets in the world. So that means every African person who produces something, we can have a market. The only problem we have in Africa, we don't believe in African products. So that's a great challenge that we need to work on. And that could be the reason why Africa is still underdeveloped. That could be the reason why many people in our continent are not working towards their goals. That could be the reason why the roads are not constructed, because number one, people are poor. So we are still the point, is corruption the only cause for African underdevelopment? So far, I've talked about education as the main point there. You can send in your comments, share the video, like it. Let me see one of the questions that have just been sent to me. This is Gichira. I'm sorry if I've pronounced your name poorly, but I understand that name comes from, I think, Kenya. So the question you've asked me is, let me just read it to people who have joined the way it is. So, Mr. David, you say that Africa's problem could be with education, and you disagree with what is happening in Uganda under the government of President Museveni. But you've not given us a solution towards why education in Uganda is not producing great students. Now, thank you, Gichira, for that question. Now, I want to put it right. Education in Uganda, much as the government introduced what we call free primary education or universal primary education. Now, this is for people who do not know about how universal primary education came into Uganda. This wasn't about President Museveni. It wasn't about the NRM government. This was a condition issued to the government by United Nations. And at first, it was actually, I think up to today, it's United Nations that was, or is still sponsoring that program. So it's not a politically based program that was introduced by the government. No, it was just imposed to the country. And the government used the opportunity to take use of that to say that it's their initiative. So I just wanted to put that clear. The problem why the education system, especially universal primary education system, is not working, the government failed to make the people in the country understand the importance of it. Number two, the government failed to pay teachers. So I'm trying to answer the question that my friend, I think he or she must be from Kenya. The government failed to pay teachers. The government failed to provide the necessities to students. And again, under the same policy, it was stated that each student, I think, was to be paying 3,000 Ugandan shillings. No, was to be paid for, I think, to take care of his lunch and breakfast or stuff like that. Now that money per student is not enough in our economy today. 3,000 Ugandan shillings doesn't buy anything constructive for someone. So the government has not taken that step to go back on the drawing board to think about what they can do to transform the entire economy. So we do apologize for any problems that have been rising up on a daily basis as we, the Ugandan people, who do think about our country and who do think about our continent as Africa. So the problem is with the government. That's why UPE, or Universal Primary Education, under the leadership of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has not really produced results as expected. So I think I've answered that question very well. And yes, through concerning education, I think I've made it clear. So any question someone can send in, you can send in direct messages, you can send in, yes, Hussein, you asked about what about justice in politics? Now, this is a very interesting question, which is, I think, moving all over Africa. Justice in politics. You see, the biggest problem that we have in Africa is that many of our leaders, or even our judges, are poorly paid. They're not respected in general because the gun rules. So the law system, and all our in other words, the justice system in our country or in our African continent has been taken over by the executive. So the judiciary is no longer active as it used to be. Now, take an example. What has happened in Uganda a few days ago? I never wanted to talk about what Gashumba is going through. Whatever the case, this is not about the political opinion. It's about understanding the judicial system. The Ugandan laws say that anyone who is arrested must not exceed 48 hours before he's taken to court. And many of the leaders, many of the human beings or people of Uganda are arrested above those hours. So the question that lies, who owns the power of the judiciary? Anyone on the media, you can hold me out there. So the political leaders, people we vote for, are the people who are letting us down because they take control of everything. I thank you, Pretty Berry Betty Namakula, for joining. It's really interesting. You can send in your comments, your questions. We are here just to discuss and see how we can liberate Africa as a whole. Frida Sevalu, thank you for joining. Well, yeah, talking about Museveni, I think Museveni is the main cause, the main problem that now most of the East African people are facing. I'm not saying that I'm doing this against the president, but if you look around the circle of all the leaders in the East African region, he's the oldest. He has been in power for more than enough years. He's the oldest. He's everything. So he takes control of all these other people. I think Kenyatta could be a son to President Museveni. So thank you for that comment about Museveni as a president. We are not just talking about President Museveni, but about the politics of Africa, because these are the key leaders who are now letting us down. Everyone is complaining. We wouldn't be seeing Robert Chagulanyi coming up. He was so much interested in music, but the problem is now rising up on a daily basis. So the leaders, of course, are letting us down. Thank you, everyone who is joining in. You can send us your questions, more questions, and we'll get again back to our topic of the day to those who are in Africa, and the topic of the night to those who are outside Africa. Is corruption the only cause for African development? Send in all your points that you think could be the cause for African development. So I was looking into education, and again went into what I would call inadequate skills and knowledge that cripples the economy. Africa, we train job seekers rather than job creators. So the largest percentage is looking for jobs rather than creating jobs so that they can employ the young generation that is yet to come. And again, there is this other point that is a problem everywhere: greed and bias. Many people have set up businesses, but the circle around them have made them fail. You kill someone because you want to get just $1, $2, or 1,000 Ugandan shillings. You forget that the person is going to employ somebody else. And that's happening everywhere in Africa: Nigeria, Kenya. The leaders we vote for, they send power forever. It's happening everywhere. Zimbabwe. Rwanda right now, some problem coming up, or if not, it's already existing. Nigeria. To mention, everywhere it's like it's now a train coming from one country to another, to another, to another, to another. So they're the same problems that we face, and they're the same problems that we have to fight against. Let's see which other question has come in right now in a few minutes ago. Talk about health and poverty. Well, this is Moses. Moses, you're asking me, don't you think health and poverty could be the greatest cause for Africa's problems? Because many people do not have access to medical services. They take long distances to go to school, to hospitals, and they have malnutrition. Children don't have education. Yes. So answering the question for what Moses you've asked me, I do agree with you. Any country where people have poor health, there is no development. There is no development. The reason why the American people or people in the Western world do last for long, whereby you have so many old people in these countries more than any other continent, it's because their health is good. Medicare, Medicaid, everything is in place. The government has worked so hard to make sure that these people have access to these services. Thank you, Dumba Jimmy, for joining in. I love you, brother, too. And I encourage everyone to keep on sharing so that we can have a very big discussion this morning. If we look into the healthy sector, where is our country? Where are the African countries going? Are they pro-people or just pro-clique? Everyone can have access to simple medication. Like we can have insurance in all African countries. I mean, people work. The problem is they're not paid. The government sometimes also takes long to pay its employees. We have seen countries where nurses and doctors strike. We have seen teachers strike. Now, if any country ever wants to develop, if the teachers are not happy, the entire economy will be down. Because through teaching, we get doctors. Through teaching, we get professors. Through teaching, we get entrepreneurs. Through teaching, we get engineers. So if any country ever fails to do that, there are no chances of any development. And that's what is happening in Africa. So the healthy sector is a very important aspect towards our development. But the question is, are our governments ready to do something towards that? I have seen, when I was still in Africa a few years ago, I remember when they brought in, I think it was USAID and some other organization that funded for people who are affected by or with HIV/AIDS. And some of our ministers in our country who are now still, I think, ministers, embezzled the funds. People talked about it, and all of a sudden it's no more in the news. So people are dying on a daily basis. I mean, I'm talking about professors who are dying, who could be teachers in schools. I'm talking about teachers themselves who are dying because of AIDS, who could be great teachers in schools, in our community. We're talking about doctors who die of AIDS. Now, one doctor who dies in Uganda, it's estimated that one doctor works on over 10 to 25 patients a day. That's Africa. If one doctor dies, that means 25 patients are also most likely going to die. Now that leaves us with a question. Are we moving forward or backwards? We're in 2017. The problems that they faced in 1990, 1992, 1964 are the same problems almost we're facing today. We're talking about days where there was no technology, no phones, no internet. Now we are in days where we can access all these, but we have nothing like a development in our country or in our continent, in Africa generally. So keep on sharing. I'm still waiting for more questions. Anyone who can ask any questions so that we can interact, share, think about what we can do to liberate our country, to liberate our continent. I'm waiting for more questions. You can send in your questions and we see how we can really achieve more of the goals. Thank you so much for those who have just joined in. Keep sharing to everyone. Ask other people to come and join the discussion. Ask other people to come and join the discussion. We can have many more people coming in and we can discuss together in this wonderful discussion. Call more people. Okay. Then another question that is coming in from Alex. Alex says, don't you think that international aid is also another factor for why we have these problems in Africa and why Africa is not developing at all? Alex, you've given him an example of Rwanda. Yes, I think I would agree with you, Alex, for the comments you've just mentioned, that international aid could be also another factor for why Africa is not developing. I take that so seriously because whenever we talk about that, we are the campaign by these international organizations. But it's like a bitter pill that the African people are taking, to be honest. If any one of us knows or you've ever had anything concerning with SAPs or structural adjustment programs, whereby they were encouraging privatization, free education, and everything. If some of the African people never understood why we had this challenge of how the governments in Africa selling off all the property, then I'm just going to put a few things together here. You can add on anything. You either believe me or you say something here on this page. It's just an open discussion. But let me put it clear. When African governments were imposed to do privatization by IMF and World Bank, they sold off everything. Now the question is, who bought the things? The African people are poor. Quote me right. The African people are poor, not because they don't have money, but they don't have enough to finance or even buy off these companies from the government. We do have some money, as many, as everyone, but we don't have the money, and even our system does not support us for the banks to give us loans to buy these companies or corporations that were previously owned by the government. So what happened? It's what we call foreign investors who come and buy these corporations from the government. The end result, all the money, all the profits, everything is taken away from Africa to countries like India, China, USA, United Kingdom. Everyone is left hanging. So when you talked about international aid is just a bitter pill. You swallow it, but it takes you to death. So I do agree with you. This could be one of the reasons why corruption is the only cause, is not just the only cause for African underdevelopment. So we can share the discussion. We can, you can send in more of your comments, what you think would be the reason for African underdevelopment. So again, looking at the policies that are introduced in our governments in Africa, in India, Kenya, in Nigeria, Uganda, Liberia, South Africa, all the policies do not favor the masses. I do business like any other person. But what happens if you're not a minister in any of the African countries? I have friends from Kenya who sometimes I ask, hey guys, how do you balance your businesses? The reality is taxes are only imposed on those who do not have friends within the government. You bring a container of, let's assume, toilets. The same container, same size, same amount, same quantity. You as a private individual and another one who comes into the faces of a minister. You all go through the same system. The only difference that comes after, you pay taxes, he doesn't pay taxes, but you're selling in the same market. So some of the policies that are made by these African countries, the governments, are in favor of only those who are within the circle. So the question again goes back. Who is responsible for African underdevelopment? Are they the people? No. People work hard. Everyone who is watching this video right now, you guys, some of you are at your workplaces. Others are in your homes, but you're watching and thinking about, why is Uganda? Why is Kenya? Why is Nigeria? Why is South Africa? Why is Liberia? Why is Tanzania not moving forward? Regardless of the funds that come from different corners, from the children of Africa who are in diaspora, the problem still stands. I have friends who have constructed houses for rent, who have set up businesses, and within just 10 years, businesses have collapsed. Why? Are the governments supporting these people? Or everyone is neglecting all their responsibilities? So these are the questions that we have to, again, think about, to, again, have to ask ourselves, what do we have to do to save our economies? So we are going to be closing in the next coming 20 minutes. You can send in your comments, send in your questions, and we see where we want to go. You know the reasons why Africa is not developing. I've just put this an open discussion so that we can see where we can solve and what we can do to change our countries. So, some of you are going to be surprised that my team, they've just sent me a message here that they've sent you invitation messages to come and join the discussion. So you are free to stand in. You're free to come in and tell us what you think, what could bring change, what can liberate us as the African people. And I'm sorry for someone who has said, why don't you use Luganda today? I wish I could, but because I have people who are following from other countries that do not speak Luganda, and those who will watch it after, because sometimes my team sends it to, again, some other areas. Sometimes they don't get the language very well, so that's why I'm now focused just in English. But again, we will have our sessions where we have to zero down to our local language for those of you who understand Uganda. But for today, I apologize. We are not going to be in position to do so. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Hasi, for joining in. That's really interesting. You can send in your comments, questions, everyone who is live right now as we discuss. We're trying to understand, is it corruption the only cause for or the only cause of African involvement? So anyway you would like to term it, it's better that way. So could it be a problem that we have to solve, or it's a problem that the next generation will have to solve? Any point that you bring in could do us a favor to just try to understand what we can do to liberate our countries, to liberate our economies, and also to bring Africa on a global map. We have seen many people who have tried to change the economy. We have seen people like Dangote in Nigeria. We have seen other leaders who have worked so hard to create change, to see that Africa can change the world at large. We're trying to look into some of the other questions of what people are asking for. Yeah, this is great. Let's see what other question is coming in. Thank you, Reverend Frida. Reverend Frida has talked about wicked people in Africa. Wicked people in Africa could be the reason why Africa is not developing. What do you have to say about this point? Now, I'm back to the audience. I'm back to the audience. Princess Frida says, wicked people. Wicked people do people who do not care about their countries. Yeah, thanks, Reverend Frida. For some of you who are watching, or some of the comments that you may not understand the language, Princess Frida says patriotism or patriotic people, that people no longer love their countries, or people no longer love their countries. She has given us an example of Idi Amin, who is known as a killer but had love for his nation. Exactly. This is what is happening. The leaders we have today are self-centered. They focus on themselves, not for the country. They feel good if their children go to Harvard, while millions of others are left uneducated. Again, thank you. So when you look at the problems that we are facing in Africa, the leaders that we have only focus on who their children are, not where the economy has to be. Looking at hospitals, and I'm liking the interested specifically in this discussion, because she has mentioned again the hospitals were better than during Idi Amin's time. Now we're talking about Uganda for our friends who are in other countries. We're talking about Uganda. If you compare the two leaders, one spent in power 9 years. That was Idi Amin Dada. Another one spent or has spent or is still in power for close to 30 years. In 30 years, we have all the referral hospitals in the country are in trouble, are in danger. They don't have machinery, they don't have services. Women sleep in corridors. No mattresses, no bed sheets, no blankets. 30 years. That's the government has been in power for 30 years. Compared to one person, one president, who is compared to Hitler. There was Idi Amin Dada, who spent 9 years building hospitals, constructed roads. Actually, up to today, for some of you who know where Kora Airstrip is, the road above Kora Airstrip was constructed during Idi Amin's time. I wasn't there, but I've read books. If you compare the roads that have been constructed in just 1 year ago, that's Kampala. Questions? So the education, the health sector, the employment sector, entrepreneurs, and everyone is now in questions. Who is having the problems? Who is causing these problems in our country, in our continent, Africa? We were trying to look into the richest people in the world, the top richest people in Africa, and some people tend to, let me try to check here. Let's try to see what we have here. Let me try to see what we have. If you're a woman and there are comments here that I'm reading, and I'm really interested in reading them because they really show what is happening in Africa and how people feel bad about it. The educated are letting down of the uneducated. In other words, it's the uneducated now who are educating the educated. And that's Africa. That's Africa as a continent. There is no country we can look out to and say, this is the greatest continent. This is the greatest country in the African continent. Every country has problems, same problems. They talk about peace, but peace starts with the people, not just about guns. The nation is at risk if the largest population doesn't have food, doesn't have medication, doesn't have education, and the nation again can't have access to public services. That's where insecurity is high. Insecurity is not about guns. So poor leadership in Africa could be the main cause for the problem. So again, another point that actually I really figured out that I think would be very important for the cause of African underdevelopment. Normally people do disagree with this word, laziness. But personally, I think somehow we, the African people, are somehow lazy, regardless of what. And laziness is not about not doing the work. Laziness is doing the work, but taking too much time. So we don't focus on time. In the Western world, a person can do more than 2 jobs within 12 hours. In the African world, 1 job is done in a week. I'm not saying to disrespect our continent, but based on the evidence, because I have been there. So we have something we can do to improve our economy, to change the society from where it is to something new, to where we want it to be. Let's drive back. Is it corruption, the main cause for African underdevelopment? We are getting out of this session tonight in about 7 minutes. We are sorry for those who have just joined in, but we just want to again say thank you for joining in. I think we'll be always online, available every Saturday for those who are already in Saturday day, and again Saturday morning around 12 a.m. or 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. that is Friday, until the following day, that is Saturday, 12 a.m., 1 a.m. or 2 p.m. So we'll be like, the reason why we do this kind of discussion late at this time is to favor all people all over the world, not just the people who are in North America, all those who have those hours that do favor, that are favored, but also people in Africa, so that they don't just watch a replay, but they be part of this discussion in which we try to put sense of understanding where our African continent is standing. In this kind of discussions, I personally, I wouldn't be interested so much in doing my motivational speeches, which I do when I go to attend public conferences. But I just want us to share what we think could liberate Africa, could change Africa, could develop Africa, so that we can have that change where everyone enjoys it, rather than people moving out of Africa to go in the diaspora to search for jobs. because I believe in Uganda, in Kenya, Nigeria, in Liberia, Tanzania, Rwanda, Ghana, Egypt, the jobs are there. So we need to just put something to appetize the entire system. But the best solution is one. Let's vote for people who care about Africa, not people who have money to buy sugar. Let's support those who come up to fight for our freedom in Africa. Nelson Mandela did it, and he was successful. It took so many years, but at the end of the day, somehow, South Africa was liberated. Milton Obote did it. It did not take so long for him to be in power, but he tried to liberate Africa. Julius Kambarage Nyerere did it. Jomo Kenyatta, Nkrumah, all these great leaders made something to liberate Africa. So let us, we the African people, not take back Africa into the hands of a liar. Let's not sell our continent. Let's fight to end corruption. Because the corruption that we talk about is still within us. And it's not inborn, it's just trained. When we're young, we're trained to do that, to be corrupt, to steal government money, swindle all the funds, and take everything away from the poor. But as Princess Frida mentioned earlier, if we are patriotic enough, Africa can be liberated. For men like Idi Amin did it, why not us? For men like Nkrumah made it, why not us? If we can improve our health sector, hospitals can be built, food can be supplied, the labor force can be empowered, job security be put in place, Africa can be liberated. Thank you so much. Have a great morning for those who are just got up to go for work and enjoy the weekend. And for those who are in countries that are planning now to sleep, have a great night. Again, my name's David Lubuurwa, and I'll be seeing you again next week, most likely same time, but we'll be communicating throughout the week on how our program will be. Keep sharing this video. Thank you so much for Reverend Princess Frida for joining in. Hasi, thank you for joining in. Alex, Dumba, Jimmy, thank you for joining in. Preeti, Berry Namakura, thank you for joining in. Frida Sewa, thank you for joining in. Hussein Delima, and many, many more others. I can't really mention the entire list. And those who have sent in your private text, we are going to put that into consideration for your suggestions. You can always send me a text in case you want to invite me for a public talk or even motivational speaking. I can always avail myself depending on my schedule. If I am not available, someone will make a schedule for me and we'll try to be part of all your conferences. Soon we'll be updating more of what we have to do. But again, thank you so much for sharing and working with me throughout this intercession of tonight. And we think what we've discussed, if you continue sharing this video, the governments of Africa will watch them and they will know what they can do. In the next session we'll try to break down what has to be done to solve African problems. Keep on sharing, keep on liking the page, keep on liking, or even send me your friend request. If I don't answer them, my team will be available to answer them, or I will also respond to those messages. Thank you so much. Have a great night and a great morning. See you soon. Bye.